Hey, how's it going? We are getting ready to give away a Scosche magic mount and a boom bottle at the end of this video. Stick around so you can figure out how to win them. Welcome to ROKBUGY. I'm gonna walk you through what we built and how we did it. Got my co-star here. We are actually just finished up a Great American Crawl in Hawk Pride, Alabama. I knew I wanted to build something like a rear steer buggy, something like that. I wanted V8, I wanted power, but I also wanted something that was gonna be really reliable. Something that was really gonna kind of pull people together, and the best thing that we could think of was a VW Bug. Now, we kind of had a VW Bug, or access to one, so to say, and that's where Jarrett Crawford and Steph came in. So what happened was they had wanted to build a Class 11 car, and they went out and bought this thing.
1971 Volkswagen Beetle that we are gonna turn into a Class 11 right now.
They started tearing it apart and everything, and it got to a point where there was just no time for them to kind of chase that pipeline of a race car race team. So I called them, brought them into the shop, and I was like, look, man, we've been moving this thing around the shop for like a year, and I think we could do something really cool with it, but the only way that I can truly get behind this thing and build this thing and do it the way I want to, I would have to own the car, because the amount of money and parts and labor that we're gonna be going after companies and building stuff with, we've gotta have some ownership on this car so that we know where it's gonna go and what's gonna happen with it. We worked out the deal, and they signed the car over, and then we really got into it. So the first thing that we had to do was figure out how we were gonna take a VW body and put that on a frame that could actually hold up to what we were gonna do with this thing. We needed something that was gonna be a good width, a good length, all that kind of stuff. So it was a JKU frame. So what we ended up having to do with this thing, and it was pretty nuts, is if you know anything about JKU frames, they come in 3 sections. And that's where the cross members are all connected. So we ended up having to cut the 3 sections apart and rip this thing apart with forklifts. Which was a catastrophe in its own. What we ended up doing was taking this thing after we got it apart, and we had to widen the middle, and then we dovetailed the back, but then did another cross cut where we put it back to where the rear rails were running parallel to the body. And we ended up pulling about 132-inch wheelbase. I think on our final adjustments, we ended up around 134 with everything because of how long our drive lines and everything ended up being. When I started designing the body mounts, I wanted something that was gonna be pretty structurally sound, because what I wanted to be able to do with this thing was gonna be pretty gnarly. And it's gonna put me in positions that if I needed that cage, I really needed that cage. The body mounts on this are 3/8 plate in the front. They come down to 1/4-inch supports, actually right onto the frame itself. The actual cage mounts onto that 3/8, and that 3/8 sits directly above all the 1/4-inch gusseting and support. So if this thing takes a hard impact, everything transfers right to the frame, and you're pretty stout. With dropping an LT1 inside this thing the way we did, typically these firewalls and these bugs came down and then they sloped all the way out there into the front because there was no engine in the front. But there's no way you're putting an engine in the back of this thing and it being a successful rock crawler with that much weight in the back. So we definitely had to have the engine up front and the LT1 up front. And you know, Jarrett and I had a couple long nights there, you know, fitting that engine in there and getting that stuff to that point. The next thing we had to get done was the cage. You know, we were sitting there looking at it and we were like, how are we gonna get the cage once it's built in and out? So we were talking and I was like, man, I think we have to build a hard top, just like a JK or any other type of Jeep, that you can actually take the top off and put the top back on. I started cutting on things and I ended up staying there, I think till morning. Jarrett came back the next day and he's like, you made like a hard top convertible. So the guys at Full Throttle and Pentagram Engineering, like how fast they got that done, it still baffles me, because they had to design, weld, and put in a full cage and do all this in about a week. And sprayed the entire Patriot Liner body on this. And Josh from Patriot Liner actually flew out because it was their first big spray like that they had done. And so Josh actually flew out, worked with them, got everything sprayed. And again, it just, I mean, killed it. So the reason that I really enjoy spraying my vehicles like Gridlock or ROKBUGY with Patriot Liner is, one, when I'm out in a place like this, for instance, I don't have to worry about trees, bushes, rocks, that kind of stuff, because that stuff really does encapsulate the body. Also, what I have found out is it does not matter what it is. If it is metal and it's in the South or on the East Coast, it will rust. So that's also another reason why I like Patriot Liner, because it encapsulates that metal and basically creates an envelope around it so that it can't have a chance to rust. When we go into the actual build of ROKBUGY, now that we've kind of like summarized up that timeline, that's when I would say all of the specs really started stacking up on this thing and what we were gonna do with it. So let me kind of walk you through what ROKBUGY is and what we've done with this thing. So it is a JKU chassis. It is stretched out to about 132, 134 inches. It is front steer and it is rear steer. Now the axle setup on that is from East Coast Gear Supply. It runs a Yukon gear and axle Grizzly locker in the front and the rear. I've always had luck with them. They are 40 spline. These are 14 bolts, but they do come from East Coast Gear Supply with a factory shave built into the cast. It adds around maybe 2.5 inches of clearance. These have 4-inch tube in them, 1/2 inch wall thick, with 40 spline shafts from East Coast, inner and outer, and 1550 Brannock U-joints. They are a super kingpin, inner outer, and they've got all of the big boy brakes and everything you're gonna get like in an F450, F550 stuff, front and rear. So that had to get obviously a Hydro Boost setup with our braking system, which then got us into the hydraulic setup. So we went to PSC. Well, we realized in the very beginning that a single CBR pump was not enough pressure to run front and rear and Hydro Boost. So we ended up having to build a 2-pump system. And then we're also running 2 reservoirs, and then we got 3-inch rams front and rear. Now, I personally, at that point, had never built something with rear steer. It was completely foreign to me. It was, again, part of a pipe dream that I've always wanted, because I've been on a lot of obstacles with Gridlock, and I was like, man, if I could just change that rear end 10 degrees either way, and that's like 20, if I could just move it a little bit, it would make my life so much easier. So we are running a 20x10 Dirty Life Canyon beadlock on these. Wrapped around those is a tire that I have been waiting on for years, and they are a 44-inch radial on a 20-inch wheel Baja Boss MT. When I saw these things for the first time, I absolutely lost my mind. Because when you take this tire and you put it up next to Gridlock's 46, which is like a bias, this has to be true to size, which a 46 doesn't. This is almost as tall as that 46, but it's only 13.5 inches wide. They are an awesome tire. I feel like they're just as good as the Sticky. The Sticky does heat up better, but these things have been flawless for me and it just worked amazing. Once we get into all of that, we had to figure out suspension in this thing. And we knew we wanted to run like a piggyback from King. I wanted a 3-inch, I wanted 16-inch, and I wanted this thing to really look like an RC car. With the 16-inch coilovers and the problems that I had had with Gridlock in the past, we kind of built kind of like an exoskeleton that would build all the suspension and put it where I wanted it. We're also running bumps front and rear. So on a build like this, you definitely need some good fabrication parts. That's where we turn to Ballistic Fab. They have a lot of high quality parts that range from a lot of stuff. Like you have great battery hold downs, and a lot of those work with the Odyssey batteries that we use. And then you'll jump into bungs and heims like we used on the front and rear steering on the axles. Then we jumped into their Ballistic Fab joints. Now, the thing I like about their 2 5/8 joint is I'm using a 5/8 bolt because in Gridlock I broke 9/16 bolts all the time. So I stepped up to a 5/8, but I didn't sacrifice any of my flex with that. Now, we knew we would need pretty cool drive lines for this thing. We knew they were gonna have to be custom, like the ones on Gridlock were, but we didn't realize how crazy that front drive line was gonna have to be. The rear is pretty straightforward, 1480s, carbon joint up front, and just a 1480 in the rear, single piece for the rear. I wanted something pretty style back there. And then in the front, that's a little technical. So it is what you consider like a 2-piece, but it actually has 3 cardan joints built into it. One coming off the Atlas, another one, a jack shaft mount, and then another one. The Atlas in this is a 4:3-to-1 Atlas. I went with a little bit, heavier of a gear ratio than I've ever ran in something, and I'm really excited about it. I also went with a factory stall. We had Kanan build us, a one-off aluminum intake for this thing because that LT1 obviously likes airflow. We had to figure out a MagnaFlow exhaust system. Now, what I love about the exhaust on this is when you start this thing, it's loud. When you get on it, it's loud. But when this thing is idling, it is nice and quiet like a stock car. You can actually have a conversation and it's not annoying. I do like a dual battery setup, especially with heavy winching and what we do with low speed crawling. We have a battery up front, which is our main battery, and then we also have like a PC1200 in the rear behind the seats, and it's kind of harder to see, but that guy's tucked in there. So we have a 1 and a 2, battery isolator on there. PSI Conversions sent us over a wiring kit. Those guys knew everything we wanted to do. What they sent us was just like a drop-in wiring harness. It made life so easy. So we went to a JS Alternators, and I believe this one's pushing around 300 amp. So this has a self-excite alternator on there that as soon as I hit, 1500, 2000 RPMs, it kicks on, and I have about 14.4 amps constantly. We did again take a trick from Gridlock that we've used in the past, and we took 2 S-Pods, and those control all the accessories and the full control system in the vehicle, like the ECU, the start, the ignition. So that kind of gets us into cooling. We do use Mishimoto on all of our stuff. You have a Mishimoto 12-inch duals in the rear, like a high-speed race fan, a V8 style Mishimoto radiator, and then we've got a giant cooler in the back for all of the hydraulic. We have 2 transmission coolers from Mishimoto that are the smaller ones, but they're still, great size. And they'll sit behind each seat with their own fans. And then we have like an overflow can from them as well. And we've got a couple other smaller coolers up on the frame rail, one for the engine oil, and one is more of like a collector point for all the hydraulic fluid to go into. Is like a last thing that goes up into the, you know, extra reservoir cans and things like that. I love my Baja Designs. I've been working with them now for about 4 or 5 years. Quality lighting like Baja Designs, there is no comparison. You'll be out here in the middle of nowhere and you'll have 6 rigs lined up. We just random lighting and they'll be lighting something up and I'll roll up with my 2 LP6s and I'll turn that on and it's like their lights are like the little night light plugged into a socket and I just turned all these lights on. It just lights up the world. Then I turn on that Onyx laser, 20-inch bar up front and forget it. Like you don't have a blind spot out there anymore at dark. We also run them as our dome lights inside the car. We have our rock lights. I don't know if it was fate or if it was just pure luck, probably luck, but the rear bumper that we kind of built on this thing and the way we ended the frame and did everything literally tucked in an RTL beautifully. You can't even tell it's there until we turn it on. You turn that thing on and it's your entire rear system. We have turn signals, brake lights, reverse, anything you can think of. And we do have some amber rear because I do love that on gridlock. So we did throw those on there, extra dust lights. The fuel tank that we got from Motobilt, I think was actually the kickoff to the new relationship we have with Motobilt and them being a brand partner of ours. It's an awesome 18-gallon tank, and I've done some long trips on that fuel tank and it's been like halfway. So it takes me a good 2 to 3 days of good wheeling to run that fuel tank down to a point where I actually need to refill it. We also have their sliders on this. I had to cut their sliders apart and then shorten them a little bit, retube them on the inside, do a bunch of cool stuff. But these are Motobilt JKU weld-on sliders and a JKU Tomahawk front bumper. Winch-wise and recovery on this stuff, every build we've ever done has been a worn winch. We are running a VR 12,000-pound winch in the front of this thing. And then we have what I call like that staple ultra hook on there from Factory 55. All of that kind of gets you to the point of designing the interior and the cockpit of this car. And when we built the dash, we built it, door to door. It's a huge dash across there. And I wanted something that was gonna make a Bug a little bit more futuristic, but I also love the Dakota Digital setup that we have in Gridlock. So we designed the same cluster and everything that's in there. We obviously wanted our PRPs. These are Gator, they're super bougie. And so we have those in there. We have a gold steering wheel in there as well. And we are running, their 4-2 harnesses. I love those. I love the clickable harnesses. And then we've got some really cool Mishimoto gear shifters in there as well. And then we knew we needed a ton of skosh mounts in this thing like we always do, handles and mirrors and mounts for GoPros and battery chargers and all that kind of stuff. 2 things that I really like about ROKBUGY is the rugged radio and the kicker soundbar. With those fans where they are and everything, and sometimes some of these obstacles you get into, we can throw our headsets on, and when you have that headset on and people are talking to you on the radio or spotters with you on the radio, you can't hear the race fans behind you. Or we can turn that kicker soundbar on and just jam out to some music, which I love that feature because it kind of makes it feel like you're in a car, not a race car. Talking about coatings in this thing, gold is a very hard color to get right, especially when you're trying to match a Rockstar Gold and it needs to match it. This build would not be in existence right now if it wasn't for Rockstar Energy. They actually came in and were a financial contributor to getting this build done. So hats off to Rockstar. It was the first big build with Rockstar Energy that we did like that. And it worked great, it did great. But having to match that gold, once you kind of work with them on that, you've got to match that gold perfectly. It was an insane build to do, and I don't think I would have done anything different besides maybe running a bigger coilover, but maybe that's the next build we do, I don't know. But as for now, we've got a couple of very minute things to do on ROKBUGY, but it's kind of here to stay, and it's been killing it, and it's shown a lot of the things that maybe we need to do another, gridlock rebuild on. And take some of the things we've learned off of this and put them into that and make that thing even cooler. If you like ROKBUGY, do me a favor, leave the comment below. As for now, We're gonna hit it. It's been a long day, a long night. And this is the ROKBUGY build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, hey, how's it going? I appreciate you guys sticking around to figure out how to win these. So we have a grip mount from Scosche, Magic Mount. This is pretty cool. It actually charges your phone while it's holding it. And this is a boom bottle from Scosche. We use these a lot. Has a mount on top for your phone. It's magnetic. It's pretty cool. So if you want to win one of these, leave a comment on this video on what you think the coolest part of ROKBUGY is. Whether it's the rear steer, the Patriot liner, the gold cage, whatever you think is cool about it, or the whole build itself. We're gonna pick out the best comment. So make sure you leave your Instagram handle as a part of your comment so that we can contact you and you can get your prizes. Good luck. Build.
Who's that?
I don't know.
I'm not trying to bother y'all at all.
No, what's up?
Is it okay if I take a picture of this? Because it is by far my favorite.
Yeah, go for it. Get in here, do it.
Like, if I could have my own would be it. Because I love bugs to begin with.
Say hello. You're on the YouTube. No, you're fine. You're fine. Get back in here. Get back in here. No, get back in here.
Too late.
No, you're already in here. Now you did it. Get back in here. Introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Say hi. Look right over that camera. Introduce yourself.
Daisy.
Yep.
Daisy.
What are you doing out here?
Wheeling.
Yeah. Did you come out for what? For the Great American Crawl. Yeah. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, actually I had the best time ever.
Tell people what the Great American Crawl is all about.
Everyone told me that it was going to be too busy and nobody would care if you were here, but I think everybody does, and I think it's awesome, and it's small, and it feels like a family, like a Jeep trip.
Awesome. That's exactly what it should be. What do you think about this thing?
That's my favorite.
It is?
Yeah.
What do you like most about it?
It's different. You took a bug and made it freaking awesome. Like, they're already really cool. I've always liked the older ones, but that I would want to go for a ride in.
Well, let me get out of your way so you can get a photo of it. I'll remember where that mark is. Or do you want to jump in there and grab a photo? Jump in there. Yeah, jump in there and grab a photo. So, yeah, there you go. Get her the whole shot. All right, drive safe.
Thanks, Daisy. Sit there real quick. Go ahead, I'm moving it.
Is that good? Hey, if it's not, like, sorry, it's a little off. I will pet you in a second. All right, sorry, interrupted. But you know what? That's exactly why we do what we do, for cool people like that. So, where were we? What were we talking about?